called Decision. But in Napoleon, in the original books, he calls it Decision, the Mastery of Procrastination. So he starts off and he says, accurate analysis of over 25,000 men and women who have had experienced failure disclosed the fact that lack of decision was near the head of the list of the 30 major causes of failure. So remember we talked about the 30 major causes of failure last week. So he's saying out of the people they studied, most people said a lack of decision was one of the major reasons out of the 30 reasons of failure. This is no mere statement of a theory, it is a fact. Procrastination, the opposite of decision, is a common enemy which practically every man must conquer, right? You have an opportunity to test this, and you have to make quick decisions when you are testing your decisions. So you have to remember when you're going through different things and whatnot. Decisiveness is what we've talked about, right? Being decisive to make decisions is the best way to go about it. But also being undecisive also has to do with a lack of focus, right? And procrastinating. When you are being lazy, you will not accomplish the things that you would like to accomplish, right? Remember some of the verses we talked about last week? Proverbs 10:4, we said lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. Laziness, procrastination. That's another example. Proverbs 12:24 said diligent hands will rule, but laziness ends in forced labor. I mentioned both these verses last week, but this still has to do very much with what we were talking about because it's still something we are reiterating, right? It is easier for God to steer a vehicle in motion than a parked car. Chinese proverb says, he who deliberates fully before taking a step will spend his entire life on one leg. So when you are indecisive with your decisions, of course you're going to fail, right? Napoleon Hill emphasizes, he says, there's an analysis of several hundred people who had accumulated fortunes well beyond the $1 million mark disclosed the fact that every one of them had the habit of reaching decisions promptly and of changing these decisions slowly. So they made the decision first, right? They made the decision promptly. People who fail to accumulate money without exception have the habit of reaching decisions, if at all, very slowly, and of changing these decisions quickly and often. So isn't that's pretty crazy? People who usually were in a level of success higher than others usually made decisions more promptly and would eventually, if they were to change the decision, would do it slowly. But people who are failing to accumulate any money or wealth or make a real blow in their life to make it, a change, tend to take too long to make decisions. They're very slow at it. But when it comes to making the decision, they change their mind very fast. And you see that happen throughout multiple things, right? Well, especially when you're watching sports, sometimes you have someone they're trying to make a decision, and when they go to make the decision, they're about to do it, but then they question themselves, like, no, I don't think that's right. So they switch, and often more times than what, sometimes it's not the right play, right? Sometimes it's just not the right play. But one of Henry Ford's most outstanding qualities is his habit of reaching decisions quickly and definitely, and changing them slowly. This quality is so pronounced in Mr. Ford that it has given him the reputation of being obstinate. It was this quality which prompted Mr. Ford to continue to manufacture his famous Model T, the world's ugliest car. When all of his advisors and many of the purchasers of the car were urging him to change it. Perhaps Mr. Ford delayed too long in making the change, but the other side of the story is that Mr. Ford's firmness of the decision yielded a huge fortune, right? Before the change of model became necessary. So it was not a pretty car. It was not a very pretty car. I don't know if you ever look up the Model T, it is an ugly car. It's not nice. It's not a very nice car. But because Mr. Ford, I don't think it's that nice personally. I know some people will disagree, I guess, but I agreed with Napoleon's statement that it was not a very nice car. But it wasn't the fact that it wasn't nice. It was the fact that he made the decision, and because he made the decision and the car came out, even with the model not looking the best, right? It still made him a huge fortune because many people saw that it worked and they wanted it, right? Regardless of whether or not it was ugly or people didn't like it the way it looked. There is but little doubt that Mr. Ford's habit of definiteness Definiteness of decision assumes the proportion of obstinacy, but this was not the main thing, right? So he was very firm in his decisions, but it wasn't the main quality. His his quality was the fact that he took the time to make the decision, right? And he was slow to change what it was because it worked. So you can't let your don't procrastinate your decision. It is best to take the risk first, right? To make a decision. And then when you make the decision, slowly start to work it out. Because remember we talked about last week, even when you make decisions or things don't work out, you don't keep going forward with the idea that didn't work, right? You try and make it better, you restart completely. So it's the same thing with a decision. If you make a quick decision and you make a definite decision, then you can work out how to make it better. Whether you have to restart the idea or whether you move forward with it because it starts to work, you have to slowly decide how to change things without procrastination. Passivity has the lethal potential to kill your dream if you allow it to. The more we partner with procrastination, the more complex the path toward our desire appears. Procrastination is the fertilizer that makes problems grow. A procrastinator never has small problems because they give them too much time to grow. A procrastinator never has small problems because they give them too much time to grow. So think about that. Small problems tend to become big ones because a procrastinator lets it become a big one, right? Let's say something very small like cleaning up some food on a kitchen counter, right? Think about it. I know everyone's experienced this at least once. If you've left crumbs on the table and it's been there for a pretty long time because you procrastinated cleaning up such a small, minor problem, let's say you come back a day later to fix it, all of a sudden there's a group of ants eating on your table and they're everywhere. And you're like, oh, wow. So now your problem hasn't just become minor, now it's become bigger because now you have to deal with an ant problem. You have to get them off your table, sweep them away, maybe put some stuff on your table to maybe kill the ants, whatever you got to do to keep them off like whatever it was, right? Your food problem now, which was small, has become a bigger problem because the ants have come and invaded your table, right? You decided to take too long to make a decision just to clean up a little bit of tiny, tiny food, and now there's a ton of ants, right? So these small things, even though you may not see it as a big problem at first, become bigger problems because if you procrastinate a small one, it's going to become a bigger problem. Sir Josiah Stamp said, "It is easy to dodge our responsibilities, but we cannot dodge the consequences of dodging our responsibilities." So you can. It is easy to dodge our responsibilities, but we cannot dodge the consequences of dodging our abilities. Basically, it is saying you cannot make a decision to do the responsibility you have, right? But when you procrastinate your decisions, of course, you're not going to be able to avoid the consequence that comes after because you didn't take the action to do it. So, because you're taking too long to fulfill this responsibility, right? Of course, it's going to have backlashes. Just like I said, you left your food in the crumb. You left those crumbs, on the table. You procrastinated the decision. The decision became a bigger issue because now there's ants. Now, what do you have to do? You have to clean up not just the food, but also the ant problem. And now you have to find where the ants are coming from as well to keep them from coming back in, right? So now you have more than just one problem. You have multiple problems because you procrastinated a responsibility that was minor. So what do you think happens when you procrastinate a bigger responsibility? Of course, the consequence will be even bigger, right? It will be much worse than what the previous consequence was. John Mason says the Bible promises no loaves to the loafer. No loaves to the loafer. So while growing up, you have to see that things cannot be half done. And you have to realize that in that statement, there's a lot of truth. If you really think about it creatively, when you're saying that the loaves, the Bible promises no loaves to loafers, I mean, if you're not working hard for it, right? You're not taking the responsibility to take action for those things, of course, you're not going to get any reward. Remember how I said in Proverbs 10:4 just a moment ago that lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. So if you're being lazy and not taking responsibility, of course you're not going to be able to do it. The majority of people who fail to accumulate money sufficient for their needs are generally easily influenced by what? Opinions from others. Most people who fail to make money or to be successful are easily influenced by opinions of others. They permit the newspapers and the gossiping neighbors to do their thinking for them. Opinions are the cheapest commodities on earth. Everyone has a flock of opinions ready to be wished upon. Anyone who will accept them. If you are influenced by opinions when you reach decisions, you will not succeed in undertaking any of these decisions, much less in that of transmuting your own desire into wealth. Opinions. The world is full of opinions. And you have to remember the media has very much influenced everything in a lot of ways. People are influenced strongly by social media and other platforms as well, different things, movies even. Some people become so emotionally attached to movie characters that they become more like them almost. They adapt to their habits because they think, oh, I want to be just like that person. They're so awesome. I love it. You know what I mean? I've seen people that they've watched TV shows that have like 6 seasons in them. They'll get so emotionally attached to a character that when they die, they actually cry and they get so depressed by their favorite character dying that you won't be able to talk to these people normally for like weeks because they're just so depressed that they're emotionally this character from a TV show dies. You know what I mean?
Come on.
And it's insane. Like for like if I'm not putting this example, but the actor who played as Black Panther, I don't know if anyone's ever seen it. For everyone that's watching, if you have seen it, the actor that played Black Panther was a really great guy. If you actually look into a lot of the things he did a lot for his community. He also had put in a lot of effort, and it really was bad that he was dealing with cancer and all this and whatnot very secretly. And I really feel like if he would have been more open, maybe he could have been open to prayer and all that kind of stuff. But if you watch it, that's different. People were hurt by the fact that he actually died in real life. This wasn't just some character that died. But when a character dies in a movie, some people are so emotionally attached to these things that it lingers, right? And lingers like they're like, oh, dude, that hurts so bad to see my favorite character die. It sucks. And it's like, but that person's still alive in real life. I'm very confused why you're so emotionally attached to something that doesn't exist, right? You make a desire and make an opinion based on how you feel on things, and then you let other people's opinions and desires also influence how you'll feel. So of course you're gonna get emotionally attached to a character that has stated an opinion, right? You let the social media's opinion on how emotions should be held out, how you should take attachment to certain things. So of course your decision when it comes to being hurt by something is gonna be more of a factor because you lost your dream crush on a TV show or something, right? So you can't let others' opinions and outside media and social media and movies and TV shows and games even and all these different things form your opinion, because then who are you? You're not your own person if half of your decisions are based off the fact, well, I kind of think this is right because of some social media article I read the other day that kind of seemed pretty logical, and it's like, but is that your opinion? Is that you choosing for yourself to make a decision to be who you are, not based off someone else, right? If you are influenced by the opinions of others, you will have no desire of your own. Keep your own counsel when you begin to put into practice the things that you are trying to do to become better, right? By reaching your own decisions and following them, you must take no one into your confidence except the members of the group of people that you trust the most. The opinions of the people that you trust the most should be the opinions that matter the most. But even at that point, you must find people around you that you can trust to have the right opinion to help you make better decisions, right? You don't want to form the wrong group of friends or the wrong group of people or have the wrong people around you, because when you do, of course, their opinions are going to influence you. Remember how we talked about in John Maxwell, the 5 closest people in your life are the people that will influence you the most, right? right? So what happens when the 5 closest people in your life are not like you at all, and they follow the opinions of others as well? Of course, that's going to influence you to make the decisions based on their opinions, not based on your personal self. You're not making personal opinions. You're not working for yourself. You're not doing things for yourself, right? You're procrastinating who you are and God and yourself at the same time, right? When you select your groups and you make friends, you don't do this stuff out of sympathy either. You don't make friends based off of sympathy for others. You make friends off of harmony with your purpose involved with them. Napoleon says to make complete sympathy and harmony with people, but I don't 100% agree with the sympathy part, because if you're only sympathetic toward the friends that you make, then you're going to become emotionally attached to people that maybe that won't necessarily fully rely on God, right? You don't want to be extremely sympathetic toward people's emotions, because if you're extremely sympathetic, then of course you're going to get emotionally broken down as well. And how are you going to be able to help those friends? One of the things I thought was interesting, when you're making a decision to help someone else, if you're already in a state where you're not emotionally okay because of certain decisions that you're making, and your friend is also not emotionally okay, trying to come to you for help, and you try to help them, you're not going to give them the right answer because you're also not emotionally in the right state. You're being extremely sympathetic toward their emotions now because you're extremely emotional. But if you're going to help influence your friends and people around you and the world in general, you have to make decisions not based off of empathy and sympathy, but you make decisions based on how God is going to influence you through the answer that you've been given. So a decision must be made that, hey, regardless of my emotions, I'm going to give you a biblical answer. I'm going to give you an answer from God, not an answer from man, right? Your decision must not come from your emotion when it comes to being an influence to others. So if you're going to become successful as well, your decisions cannot be based off your emotions either. That's why a lot of people in the workplace, when you're working at places, right, they say, hey, try to keep your personal life, and when you come into work, don't become so emotional about things, because what happens when you bring emotions into work, right? More often times than not, you end up not doing the work properly, right? You don't do the work properly, so you have to make a decision. Close friends and relatives, while not meaning to do so, will often also handicap who you are through opinions, like I just said, and sometimes through ridicule, which is meant to be humorous to them. I do like humor very much, and I make a decision to make a lot of jokes and kind of deal with things with humor, because it's easier for me to deal with life in general when I am being humorous about it. But there are those who will take humor too far when it comes to trying to make you happier or to help you. So even through opinions and ridicule and sometimes humorous jokes, to try and be like, oh, well, maybe you should, cut your hair. It looks kind of funny. It's like, is that an insult or are you just making a joke? People do that a lot though. They'll make jokes to be like, hey, well, you should probably change the way you think about this. Ha ha ha. And they think they're making a joke out of it, when in all honesty, behind that joke, they're being serious. And if you realize that, you're like, oh wow. So, like, that's in a way they're almost ridiculing who you are, but through their own opinion as well. So you have to realize that sometimes even people who are friends and family, people that are very close, will make jokes about things, and you have to understand and ask God to give you the wisdom to understand whether or not what they're saying is really the opinion you should listen to, right? Like if someone makes a joke about my hair looking bad, especially someone close, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it just kind of looks bad right here," and they're just making a joke. What's gonna happen usually, right? In the back of your head, you're gonna be like, does it actually look bad? Because now you're not sure if it's a joke. You think it's real. Even if they are making a joke and they're not serious, your brain will subconsciously start to think, oh my gosh, wait a minute. Is their opinion right? Does my hair actually look bad? Do I need to change the way I look? Does this look bad? Whatever it might be, right? You start to really think about it. So thousands of men and women carry inferiority complexes with them all through life, because some well-meaning but ignorant person destroy their confidence through an opinion or ridicule. And you have a brain and mind of your own. So just like I said, someone made a joke about my hair. I started to think, wow, maybe my hair might actually not look that great. You go look at yourself in your mirror. You start to actually think, well, maybe it really does look bad. So then what do? You try to cut your hair or get it cut by someone else, try and fix it. Because now you're subconscious on the fact that someone made a joke saying, your hair kind of looks bad. It's the same thing. If you're open to listen to people's ridicule and opinions of who you are, of course it's going to influence you. But you can't. You must let God seep through your mind and help you to understand that you are loved, that you are amazing, that He is there for you, right? And if you can get this idea that God brings peace into your life and that God does love you, of course, other people's opinions aren't going to matter at all. But most people don't see that. Most people don't have that. So they take ridicule and they take opinions from the outside world and people around them as well. And they start to what? Create a persona based off the opinion of others. So most oftentimes than not, people become very fake because what happens in certain friend groups, they act like one way. And then all of a sudden in the other friend group, they act another way. And then in front of their parents, they act another way. Right? In front of the person they end up loving, they act another way as well. So now you have 4 different versions of you trying to accumulate, right? You're trying to be multiple people at once because you don't really know who you are because you've come to try to be what others assume you are, right? You become the opinion. Everyone states their opinion of who you are, so then you end up becoming more like the people that opinionate who they think you are. So this group might think that I really, really like this kind of movie when I don't, but I act like I do because I'm trying to stay close to them because I don't want their opinion of me to be bad. And then this group of people, they think I might like to construct things or build stuff, even though I'm really not into it, right? But I don't want their opinion of me to be bad, right? The person I end up falling in love with, whatever case, she ends up loving these certain things about me, so I avoid telling her other things about myself because I don't want her opinion of me to be bad. People get so self-conscious of others' opinions into becoming people who they are not. You have a brain and a mind of your own, and you must use it to reach your own decisions. And if you need facts or information from other people to enable you to reach your decisions, as you probably will in many instances, acquire these facts or secure the information you need quietly without disclosing your purpose. You don't have to tell everybody how you feel about some things. You don't have to tell everybody these decisions or meanings or whatever it might be, right? Go to people that you trust privately to discuss things, right? Because then if you are formulating an opinion based off tons of people because you're open to ask them for an opinion on how you should do things for yourself, of course it's going to be hard to move forward from those decisions because now you've listened to more than one person give you an opinion, right? You're not being positive in who God made you to be. You're becoming positive in who others think you are instead. You're not becoming your own person. You're becoming what others believe you are. So now you're no longer the person that God wanted you to be. You're becoming the world standards of who you're supposed to be. The devil now has a grasp on who you're supposed to be because your opinion of yourself has become the opinion of others as well. It's not God's opinion of who you are. It's not His love that's being spread onto you. It's Satan's hold on you now because now you've let the opinion of the world determine who you're becoming. But in this characteristic of people who have but a smattering of veneer of knowledge to try and give the impression that they have knowledge, such people generally will do too much talking, too little listening, and keep your eyes and ears wide open and your mouth closed if you wish to acquire the habit of a prompt decision. So Napoleon is saying that most people who are on a level that have no success will generally do too much talking and will not listen. This has to do with most things in life as well. If you've ever watched a UFC fight before, more often times than not, the guy who ends up doing most of the talking doesn't always win. I was watching a video. I was watching a video of these two people who were UFC fighters at the time. I can't exactly remember their names, but they had a stare down when they were about to fight, and one of the prompters was basically talking about how the fact that when you look at this stare down, you realize a complete difference in one of the two. One man thinks he's a killer because he's fought a lot of people and beat them up, while on the other end, this dude is not a really big fighter and he just entered the UFC, but the man's actually a killer. He fought in the war. He was in like an actual like Russian military group and has killed people. So you on one hand you have one dude who was a killer, on the other hand the guy's not. But this dude who wasn't was jumping up and down, just kind of like ready, super hyped for the fight. The guy who was a killer just stared straight at him, no flinching, no face, wasn't intimidated by the guy, right? He had no malice for this person, but he was just ready to beat the dude. He was ready to beat the tar of this man. He was like, I'm in here to fight. While the other dude's bouncing around and he's like sitting here, trying to intimidate him, the other man just stood still and looked straight at him. So it's kind of scary when you really think about it. The people who end up tending to do the most talking or do the most movement or are more jumpy about things usually aren't the ones who are the most serious about how they're doing things, right? That may not be an amazing example. It was just kind of one that I thought of. But you have to realize that you had two polar opposites of people, right? One person definitely thought they were all that, while the other person was, right? This person thought he could be a killer, while the other person really was. So if you end up being the person that does a lot of talking, of course you're not going to be the more serious person. Of course you're not going to be that successful. Of course you're not going to be doing that much because what? You're doing a lot of this and not a lot of listening. Because when you listen, what happens? You gain knowledge, right? You gain knowledge to understand how to make better decisions, how to do things easier, and you tend to listen to the right opinions. You don't end up listening to the wrong ones because if you do a lot of talking, of course, you're going to fill yourself and fill others with random things that you're talking about because they're just listening to what you're kind of having to say and then also kind of giving back their feedback really quickly too because you're not listening to each other. Most people don't tend to have very strong friendships because of the fact that one person does most of the talking while the other person just doesn't listen because they don't like how much they talk. It becomes annoying, right? You tend to become friends with people that you find more annoying because you are tolerating them because you don't want their opinion of you to be bad because you don't want them to think that you're not a good listener. You tolerate friendship, right? So if you're talking too much, you will do very little. If you talk more than you listen, you will not only deprive yourself of many opportunities to accumulate knowledge, but you also disclose your plans and purposes to people who would take great delight in defeating you as well. There are people that are out there, whether you believe it or not, when someone hears a bad opinion about you, if they don't like you, they will tell other people. They will tell other people things about you that you don't want them to know because they heard something about you from someone you thought you could trust because you have too big of a mouth and you talk too much about certain things, right? Of course, people who hate you and envy you or just don't like you in general are going to tell others to spread that knowledge to try and hurt you, to make an opinion about you that may be false, right? So remember also that every time you open your mouth in the presence of a person who has an abundance of knowledge, you display to that person your exact stock of knowledge or your lack of it. Genuine wisdom is usually conspicuous through modesty and silence. I think that's really, really powerful. Genuine wisdom is usually conspicuous through modesty and silence, right? What does scripture say? You go to Jesus in silence, right? And you pray alone. More oftentimes than not, when you shut the door and you pray in silence with the Lord, what happens? God will reveal something to you. But when you're out with a bunch of people who may not really have a lot of faith and you're out here praying and stuff like that, there's nothing wrong with praying out loud with people, right? But God also wants you to spend that time in silence because in silence, what usually happens, you gain more wisdom. You gain more knowledge in silence because you are alone. And it's just you and God, right? When you are reading books and you're trying to figure out things, or you're investing yourself in reading and trying to gain more knowledge, right? Because you're by yourself, your brain will be focused to understand what it is you're seeking. So then the opinion of others is no longer in the room. Others can't tell you how to read that book. They can't tell you how to pray to God. They can't tell you how to gain wisdom. They can't tell you how to gain that knowledge. It's when you exit your room. Well, the opinion of others start to flood in sometimes, and then you have to learn which ones to block out, which opinions to really look into, and who has a better understanding of different stuff, right? Like if you were to look into a book to learn about business, right? You're not going to go to a book that talks about fairy tales, right? That'd be the wrong opinion. You go to a fairy tale book that has business oriented stuff in it, like, oh, well, this person ran a flower shop and he did such a great job and this is how he did it. Are you really going to believe a fairy tale book about how a person ran a flower shop in this superpower magical world of whatever? Or are you going to go to a real book about real life that talks about how to truly run a business, how to make money, right? Because that book is just an opinion of how that person believes or perceives how you're supposed to run things, when in all honesty, it may not be the truth. Passivity has the lethal potential to kill your dream if you allow it to. When you are passive, right? It has the lethal potential to kill your dream if you allow it to. So the truth is that the inactivity of your brain and you being too passive and you might get making decisions will usually feed fear. So when you are lacking in this understanding of how to formulate things, right, and you're taking too long to make a decision, like we said, most people who are successful make it the prompt decision and then they change things slowly after. But if you are not quick to make decisions and you are being too passive and you are too scared, of course, you're going to feed fear. You're going to feed the outcome of your fear, and it's not going to help, right? There's a story of an airplane jump that I want to talk about in this book. It says an airplane will expend more than a third of its fuel just in takeoff and ascent process. Once that plane is at 35,000 feet, it can cruise and use far less fuel than it just started out at. It gets rid of a lot of its fuel, gets rid of the moment it takes off, which is pretty crazy. But we are the same way. It takes a lot of discipline, energy, and courage to start something. But once we have momentum, we gain real traction. The truth is, like I said, the truth is that inactivity will feed fear. And military instructors who train soldiers to jump out of airplanes know that if they get a private on the verge of jumping, and then at the last moment, the soldier freezes up under the pressure and stays hidden inside the plane, they only have a short window of time to get that soldier to back up in the air and jumping out of the plane. Otherwise, it will never happen. The psychological impact of not jumping can quickly settle in as an irreplaceable fear and paralyzing norm. So he's saying if you can't get the soldier to jump out the first time, it's never going to happen again. Because the fear of not wanting to jump out sets in. So the next time they're in that plane, they're definitely not going to do it. Because the first time that messed them up, right? So it's easy to let passivity masquerade itself as patience in your life, but deep down in our hearts, we know the truth. We must take decisive action or our dream will become a wish. Chris Valaton says Noah didn't wait for his ship to come in, he built it. Noah didn't wait for God. Noah didn't wait for God to build the boat, right? Noah had to build the boat in order to survive, right? It is not enough to talk a good game. We have to translate our thinking into speaking and our speaking into action, right? Jesus once told a parable about two sons in Matthew 21:28-31. But what do you think? A man had two sons, and he came to the first and said, "Son, go work today in the vineyard." And he answered, "I will not." but afterward regretted it and went. The man came to the second son and said the same thing. He answered, I will, sir, but he did not go. So which of the two did the will of his father? And the crowd says the first. Jesus said to them, truly I say to you, the tax collectors and prostitutes will get into the kingdom of God before you do. The answer is very clear. Those who take action are favored. Those who do what they say are going to have integrity that leads to a productive authority. So you have to remember, the parable is not the fact that the first kid did it. It's the fact that the kid said he didn't want to do it, but then he did it neglectfully. He didn't do it right away, but he did it eventually. But the second kid, though, said he would do it, and he didn't. So what happens? You have to make a decisive action first, do it, and you'll be rewarded for that, right? Those who take action are favored. This is why Benjamin Franklin once said, well done is better. Well done is better than well said. You can say lots of things, right? Lots of things. But if it's not done, of course nothing's going to happen. You could be a well-spoken speaker, but if it makes no impact, of course it's not going to be well done. Napoleon Hill said, if you are influenced by the opinions of others, you will have no desire of your own, like I stated earlier. So far too many of us let critical opinions of others work as opposition against our course of action. Who we become, right? We end up becoming who others think we are because we want their opinions to be better for us. We're not caring about the opinion of God, who he thinks we are. We tend to care more about the mouth of others, how they listen to how we say things, and their opinions on how they state how our lives should go because they think that they are making a better decision for us. But who's to make a better decision for us when you're supposed to be the decision maker in your own life? And if you're supposed to make a decision for yourself, then why are others making the decision for you? Right?
Come on.
You ask others to give you knowledge to make a decision, but ultimately the decision still has to be your own. Just like you can ask God for all the wisdom in the world, but if you still make the wrong decision based off the wisdom God gave you, that's because that was your decision, not because that was God, right? But if you make a decision based on how God influenced your life, but you agree, right, that is the right decision as well, then you're allowing God to help you make the decision, right? We have to be willing to be wrong and even ridiculed for our attempts at greatness sometimes, though. And the great theologian and Christian philosopher G.K. Chesterton said, anything worth doing is worth doing wrong. So you must let go of the fear of failure. Failure is not fatal, but procrastination can definitely be fatal, though. Even the word decision has a powerful meaning. The Latin root cis or sid is familiar because of many of our English words that we have. They are not pleasant words. See if you can recognize a pattern. Pesticide, homicide, suicide, decide. The Latin root decision literally means to cut or to kill. So isn't that crazy that the word decision has the exact same root words and syllables as homicide and suicide? You also have to decide to cut or kill. So feeling decisiveness in any area of your life can help you grow in this discipline, right? As you become more decisive in your health, workplace, parenting, or even clothes shopping, you will find that skill and value carrying over into the financial areas of your life. The quality of your life will be based on the quality of the decisions you make. Tony Robbins says life is based on decisions, not conditions. Your condition doesn't usually, yeah, your conditions can influence who you become, right? But ultimately, it is still your decision to become who you're supposed to be, right? You could live in a horrible uptaking, have a bad family, horrible home, you know what I mean? But there's also people who have had that same upbringing, abusiveness, and all this horrible stuff that's happened in their life. And then you see them sitting in like, a $1 million apartment somewhere in like some huge city. And you're like, well, how'd you get that? Well, my life wasn't that great. And so, well, how can you go from this to becoming that? It's because of why I made the ultimate decision, right? To not let that become who I was, to not let that influence who I'm supposed to be, right? They may not have had a great upbringing, but they became someone other than the people who brought them up. They became better than that, right? Because it wasn't the condition that made them who they were, but the decision, right? So you must choose. You have to choose to listen. You have to choose to understand, right? Don't let too many things break you down or destroy who you are, right? How we do anything is how we do everything, Paul Martinelli says. How we do everything is how we do anything is how we do everything. So depending on how you are doing things is how you're going to keep doing things. If you keep making decisions to do certain stuff and that outcome keeps becoming the same outcome constantly, you have to formulate a new idea, restart completely so that your habits will form better habits, right? If you keep the same habits over and over again and the habits keep making you fail, then you keep making the same decisions the same way, right? Of course, you're going to keep making those same decisions too. You're going to keep making failed decisions. You're going to keep making the wrong ideas. You're going to keep messing up. You're going to keep having these bad habits because you're deciding to let all those things still factor in instead of trying to make newer decisions, a prompt decision, right? Keep your eyes open and your mouth closed, right? Keep your ears open as well. Let one of your first decisions be to always have a closed mouth and an open ears and eyes. So as a reminder yourself to follow that, tell the world what you intend to do, but first show it. This is the equivalent of saying that deeds and not words are what count most, right? Your actions create who you are, not your words, right? Most people who end up being pretty influential in the world, right? Depending on how they word things, people will listen to it and be like, well, is that how they really live their life? Or are they extremely hypocritical? Huh? Right? A person might say something else, but then you see in the background, they act nothing like how they say. So then what will make you really want to listen to what they have to say then if they're completely not even acting the way they speak, right? Your words can only do so much, but if you're not putting your words into action, of course you're going to look like a hypocrite. So you must tell the world what you intend to do, but in order to do that, you must first show it, right? Napoleon Hill says every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit, right? Every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. He's saying even through all these hardships, even through all the failure and all these different things that you go through, all of that always carries some kind of seed of something that will be just as great, right? If you go through a death, God will bring you life in some other way, right? If you go through poverty, God will enrich you, right? But you have to persevere. You must make decisions, right? You must take action in what the word tells you to do instead of taking a step back, right? Hebrews 12:11 says, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. But later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. Oh, that's so powerful. Because you can deal with so many different things, right? Deal through so many adversities and whatnot. And usually, like I said, ultimately it takes action. When you make a decisive decision to just do something, to take a risk and know that God's there behind you and backing you up. Just like this verse says, discipline is not easy. Disciplining yourself is not easy, right? When you have yourself in a bad habit of eating unhealthy a lot, it's not. It is very, very hard to break away from that. Like I still might be skinny, but I'm definitely not healthy on the inside at times because I just don't really eat extremely healthy. But it's super hard to break that habit because I really love chocolate and pizza. I really love pizza. I love chocolate. I love pizza. I love burgers. All of this American dream food garbage. It's so good and so cheap. It's so cheap, but it does not make it the right decision. All right. Because, 10 years down the road on a healthy scale, I will probably be destroying my heart with all this garbage because if I don't change the habit. But I'm no. I'm making a decision to do better. I'm eating less of that garbage though. So a lot of this stuff has helped me to understand that. But if that's right, if I didn't change my habit, that's right. But since I yes, exactly, amen. Since I am, amen. Amen. but my but you have to obviously, like I said, it ultimately comes down to you making a prompt decision to change quickly, right? And you take too long to change, what becomes much, much, much harder to make a decision, right? You'll be quick to change things, but it won't be a decisive decision, right? So through everything that might be hard, through discipline, through practice, if you take the time, even if it will be painful, God will bless you. That will produce a harvest of righteousness, right? So I'll go ahead and pray. Thank you, everyone that is for watching, Lord, and everyone that's here. It's been a very interesting morning. I pray that you bless everyone with making decisive action, decisive decisions to formulate an opinion and to gain knowledge based off what God says and what others are seeking in truth with God. I pray that you don't let yourself be influenced by the world's opinions and the world's media, and that you don't become a persona of someone that you're not meant to be. I pray that you're blessed with the knowledge and the wisdom that God gives everyone through the Bible. And I pray that you ask God to give you wisdom if there is something going on right now that makes it really hard for you to make a decision and you're not sure. Just ask God for wisdom. And I pray that God does give you wisdom to make a decisive blow in your